Hey everybody, and welcome back. Congratulations, you have now done some research, presumably some computer science research. You have come up with a hypothesis, you have done your homework, and the background work of trying to find whether somebody had done this already or something relevant, and then you designed and maybe even executed an experiment that told you whether your hypothesis was true or false. And that's really all there is to it in principle. Of course, in practice, there's a lot more to it, as you will find out over the course of the next couple of weeks. But in principle, that's really all there is to it. You formulate your hypothesis, then you do your background research. Of course, background research that you have done before might inform what your hypothesis looks like, and then you design a set of experiments. Could be one, could be a series of experiments to find out whether your hypothesis was true or not. So really, there's a very empirical trait to this research in that you run the experiment and then you see whether it works or not. Not all of computer science research is that way. A lot of it is theoretical as well, where you don't really run an experiment as such, but you come up with an hypothesis and then you might come up with a proof to show that what you have hypothesized is true in general without actually running any experiments. Or similarly, you might refute this by coming up with a counterproof, with a proof that shows the opposite is true, or something like this. Now, here we're going to focus on empirical computer science research and not so much on the theory part, because, well, empirical research tends to be much more accessible. There's actually things you can run, right? And that in many cases might be physical things that you can manipulate, like the microbits that you got. You can try to do different things with it and try to work with the sensors. You can control the LEDs and you can see what they do. So that's what we're going to focus on here. And now I want to take a little bit of a step back and put this in a wider context. I'm sure that you have thought about this already as you were doing all these previous exercises. How does this relate to what I'm teaching? How can I maybe take this back into the classroom? How does this fit into the bigger picture? We're going to think about this a little bit more now. And for that, I would like you to have a look at a paper that was written based on a talk that was given many years ago in 1976 by two people who have won the Turing Award. So that in computer science is the equivalent of the Nobel Prize. We don't have a Nobel Prize. There's no category for computer science. Our equivalent is the Turing Award. And these people talked about computer science as empirical inquiry. So really very much along the lines of what you have already done. You empirically found out something, you validated or refuted your hypothesis by running some experiments. And in this paper, you can find the reference to it in the additional materials for this video. The authors really go on a kind of much more general journey of putting it in context with respect to empirical inquiry in other disciplines and how kind of everything fits together, how a different characterization of this and a different instantiation of this in a different research area can really be mapped to something that happens in computer science directly. This has a slight bend towards artificial intelligence, and that is intentional because that is my area and that is why I do research. But really, the concepts are more general than that and apply throughout computer science. It is a relatively long paper, so really I only want you to have a look at the first part. So when it starts to heuristic search, you can stop there. Of course, you're more than welcome to continue. And if you are interested in AI, then I would recommend that you have a look at that as well, because the search and the general methods of search that they're describing there are really the fundamental parts of a lot of AI today. Also, when you're reading this, keep in mind that this was written a long time ago, so not everything that's described there is relevant anymore, and things have obviously evolved since then. But in terms of giving you a foundation and fundamental understanding of empirical research, in particular in computer science, it's still great, and in particular, it is relatively accessible. All right, so have a look at that, and while you're doing that, think about how that relates to what you're teaching. How does that affect other areas? How does that connect to something that you already know? And how does that connect to what you have just done, where you've come up with an hypothesis and investigated that empirically?